The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Amanda Nichols from CCIQ and I'm your facilitator for today. Joining us is CCIQ Employer Advisor Robert Hall. Rob? Excellent. So the easiest way to make money in your business is to learn how you can save it. Research demonstrates that having a sound workplace rehabilitation and return to work process in place is not only in the best interest of injured workers, but also has a positive impact on employer workers' compensation and insurance premiums. Managing the rehabilitation return to work process can be an overwhelming and often an exhausting process for employers and injured employees alike. Today, Rob is going to provide you with some important and useful tips to successfully manage the return to work process. But before we start, if you want to ask Rob a question at any time during the webinar, you can do so using the chat box that appears on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. So I'll now hand over to Rob, who'll take you through today's presentation.
Thanks, Amanda. Welcome everyone today. Good afternoon. So what we're going to cover today, I'll just say firstly, if you put any questions through, I'll endeavour to cover those and answer those at the end of the presentation. But what we're going to cover today is, first of all, what to do if there's an injury, 101. So your statutory reporting requirements and even as far as communications with the worker and colleagues, managers in the workplace. We're also going to cover off on cost of injuries, so the quantifiable and the non-quantifiable costs. And we're going to also refer to some research which is still current today around the health benefits of work and the benefits of an early return to work. We're going to speak today about suitable duties programs and adherence to those programs as well, and obligations of all parties. And also I've included in these slides some tips for managing health providers. And when I say health providers, I'm talking about general practitioners, doctors. And I've also included some slides on the bigger picture, workplace culture and communicating with workers, injured workers in general. And then after this presentation, I've actually got a few slides and I just want to briefly speak about the small business program that CCIQ are running in conjunction with the Office of Industrial Relations. And there's definitely some benefits and things worthy of speaking about today. So first of all, as I'm sure many of you are aware, there's two types of workers' compensation claims in Queensland. There's a statutory no-fault claim. So if a worker is injured in the course of their employment and the application is accepted by WorkCover, then WorkCover may pay the compensation during their medically certified absence from work, as well as reasonable and necessary medical, hospital and any rehab expenses as well. As I said, this is a no-fault scheme, so the worker is going to be covered irrespective of the cause of the injury. And the other type of claim, the common law claim. So if a worker is actually able to prove that the injury he or she suffered in the course of their employment was caused by the negligence of the employer, then a common law claim will compensate them for generally their pain, suffering, loss of amenities, loss of income, and out-of-pocket expenses, both past and future for those last 2 points. Now, Queensland and New South Wales, I believe, are the only states and or territories in Australia that have these two types of claims that can operate in conjunction with each other. For example, an employee may accept a payout of a statutory claim and then make a common law claim later. But of course, your workers' compensation policy will cover you for both types of claims. So we're first going to just cover off on what should be going on in relation to when an injury occurs in the workplace. So there's the obligation under the relevant legislation, workers' compensation legislation. So that's the Workers' Compensation and Rehabilitation Act here in Queensland, that the employer's got the obligation to report the injury for work cover. Now that's within 8 days of becoming aware of the injury or later where reasonable. So obviously there's flexibilities there in terms of you know, with the insertion there of what is reasonable. So immediately after an injury, obviously number one is get the medical assistance. Early intervention is the key. So talk to the employees, support them, don't blame. Obviously there is an investigation, and you know that yourselves you may be conducting. You may have systems and processes already in place to deal with you know, what is to occur if an employee sustains an injury. But we won't go into that detail at this point. So during the recovery, offer the return to work options. So light duties or alternative duties, as they're sometimes called, and keep talking to the worker about their progress. Now this point and the next point, planning for the worker's return, I'll discuss these in a bit more detail too in a couple of slides, and this is just around suitable duties plan and return to work. So, you know, when you're planning for the return, as part of what I will cover in more depth is, you know, you're developing a list of duties based on what their skill set is, what they can reasonably do, and it's important really to get input from the worker and the doctor as well. And when the person walks back in the door, the actual return to work, everybody else needs to be aware. So the supervisors and co-workers need to understand the injured person's limitations. And really you need to make sure there's a supportive culture there for that person to come back to. And the last point there, review and improve. So the injured employee's feedback can be very useful to improve your systems or processes. And obviously stemming from that as well, a review of feedback from other staff as well who may have been around at the time of an incident or at the time an injury was notifiable. So we'll just now, the next couple of slides, I just wanted to go over the hidden costs. So the quantifiable and non-quantifiable. Now, I'm not going to go through that list, but it's pretty evident yourselves. You would be able to, probably if I asked you a minute ago, could you list what's quantifiable? You'd probably come up with most of those. But WorkSafe Queensland have got a really good injury cost calculator, and I'd recommend after the presentation, when you get the slides, jump onto their website and have a look at this calculator. So it's able to assist you in calculating the initial and the often overlooked and uninsured costs of real and potential injuries. So the calculator will account for incident costs, including first aid, transport of the worker, investigation costs, including the time to cease production and investigate the incident, damage costs, including assessment, repair and cleanup time, replacement costs, including locating, hiring and training a replacement worker for a period, and productivity costs as well, including disruption and claim management time. So these are the quantifiable productivity costs. General insurance matters such as property and equipment is not covered by the calculator or any common law claims. Now, the non-quantifiables, lost productivity due to disruption, the employee engagement and the cultural impact that the incident may have had on other employees, colleagues, and sometimes unfortunately a business's brand reputation is impacted, and societal perceptions of that business. So in terms of the research in this area and health benefits of returning to work, there is a body of evidence, and I've referred here to the Australasian College of Occupational and Environmental Medicine and the Royal College of Physicians had the data is from May 2011, which is still current today. And some of you may be aware of this this document or this study titled "Realising the Health Benefits of Work." But as you can see there, the longer someone remains off work, the less likely it is that they're actually going to return. And it's quite alarming when I first saw these statistics that after only 70 days, the chance of returning is 35%. Now, I'm sure that many of you today may have experienced a situation where an employee has been off for a long period due to, you know, a number of circumstances relating to their injury or arising from. So you can probably see that the health benefits, or the benefits, you know, the early return reduces the risk of long-term disability and improves quality of life. Also stemming from that research, injured workers who are offered suitable duties are twice as likely to return to work. Strong evidence suggests that absence from work tends to perpetuate itself, as shown by those numbers. And really what we say in summary, what I would say in relation to this slide is that we would encourage businesses to do all they can to encourage a person's stay at work or a prompt return to work where it's reasonable within the parameters. And I'll touch on this a bit later, but that's also possible if you don't have suitable duties on site, that the person works in part of in a host program with a host employer. But I'll touch on that a bit more in coming slides. So in assisting workers to recover at work, I mean, there is an obligation under the Workers' Compensation and Rehabilitation Act, the state legislation, that employers have an obligation to take all reasonable steps to assist or provide the worker with rehabilitation for the period of the person's compensation, so for the life of the claim. And aside from obviously the statutory obligation, injured workers are going to feel less disconnected from the workplace and their co-workers. It'll help workers maintain rapport with your business. It will assist in their rehabilitation in and outside of work. It'll give them a sense of purpose. You know, any of these return to work concerns should be discussed, and educate the worker on that extended periods away can be detrimental to them. Now, I'm sure some of these are absolutely obvious to all parties, but I just stress these are important factors that everyone should be considering. And of course, providing a positive and supportive workplace for the worker to return is really important. Now, we'll just move to the part of the presentation now on suitable duties programs, STPs, as you probably hear a lot. So really, the outcome of a good suitable duties program is essentially work hardening improvement. So, you know, both physical and psychological. So, and the benefits of a good one include, you know, you're going to reduce the likelihood of aggravations or exacerbations. There's reduced claim costs because you're on a path with a timeline for recovery, which obviously may change due to the nature of the injury, but at least there is a focus on repair and returning to work. There's reduced downtime, reduced claim durations, reduced loss of productivity and skills of that injured person from the workplace, reduced likelihood of employment issues arising, and also reduced likelihood of a common law claim arising. And at the end of the day, it assists to mitigate your future economic loss. And of course, the most obvious one there when we're talking about that is keeping your premium down. So I will continue just on this topic. Look, and I know we may have some questions that arise from this, but it's regarding suitable duties. They don't always have to be in the pre-injury role. So have a think about what other types of duties that the person may be able to do within their skills and abilities. Now, it might be that you don't actually have any work available for the person at the time. There may not be any vacancies. There may not be any way that you can give the person meaningful work. Or it may be the case that a suitable duties program has put it on such limitations on the worker that they're very limited in what they can actually do as part of their recovery. And at the end of the day, there is a legal obligation. If you cannot provide suitable duties to an employee, then you notify WorkCover in writing of that. And WorkCover will then work with the employee to find host employment. Now, unfortunately, host employment can be with anyone, anywhere. They're not going to necessarily find a host employer within the same industry as your business may be. And what I would say here is generally with when you get to the point of host employment, the longer it is, it goes back to that the evidence, research-based evidence that the longer somebody is away from their workplace, the longer their time, the less likely they are to return to that pre-injury role. But at the end of the day, if a business isn't able to provide duties at that point in time, that might mean that further down the line, after the suitable duties program is ended or there's a review, and there's an indication of what the person can do, they may be able to come back into the workplace and do some duties. Just thinking again about suitable duties programs, prepare the injured workers' colleagues for the return to work. So for those changes that they may be seeing, duties that a person might not be doing now. So they understand a person's not just coming back and appearing to bludge. Unfortunately, I've heard that of disputes arising out of people complaining about somebody when they had absolutely no idea that the person had come back on light duties. Obviously, with the idea and the concept behind suitable duties plan is that it's going to be at reduced hours and tasks. And part of that is monitoring and planning and discussing any concerns with the worker. And a suitable duties plan that is formally signed off by an occupational therapist who, in most cases, WorkCover will, may determine that an occupational therapist should come out and assess the person's fitness for their pre-injury role. That coupled with the recommendation also or the requirement in the end of the person's doctor to agree to the suitable duties plan and the employee to agree along with the employer, you've got a document there that can't be modified or amended in any way unless all parties agree. So it's really important there that if you've got a suitable duties plan in place the person's been assessed by an occupational therapist, the doctor has taken the occupational therapist's outcomes of the review and has agreed and signed, then this can't be modified and or amended in any way, even if the worker says, "Oh, look, I feel, it's week 4 of 8 weeks and I feel great, and I can lift 10 kilos above my shoulders. I don't need that 5 kilo limitation." That is just a recipe for disaster, and without the person getting a sign off, at least from their doctor, that they're okay to do that. So while we're on the topic of speaking with doctors and interacting with doctors whilst in relation to somebody's injury, now this slide really would apply also to non-work related injuries if there's somebody sustained something outside of work. And really, at the end of the day, it is ideal if you have a preferred GP or clinic that's aware of the business and your return to work practices, that might be aware of. You may send people for pre-employment health checks. You may send people during employment for medical assessments. So it's most likely then you can maintain a good relationship with the reception staff. I have actually seen cases where a GP's been invited for a worksite visit as well, and that was in a manufacturing background, and of course it wasn't too far down the road from the doctor's surgery. But this gave the GP an insight into the type of work that their patients would be doing, or the patient was doing. And I guess this point and the next point, attending GP appointments, are really, of course, with the workers' authority. They're really that's where you've really got good rapport with an employee, and at the end of the day, with the good rapport comes the ability here to get the information. So to ask questions about recovery timeframes, treatment options, but most importantly, you're not concerned with or needing to know about the particulars of an injury. Your concern is, when can the person return to the pre-injury role? How can we get them there safely, and what reasonable adjustments do we need to make? And I stress there at the bottom of the slide, it's really important. In most cases, a doctor or a GP is only going to go off the information that the worker has provided them. So quite often they don't have anything in the way of a position description or a list of core duties that the employee may do. They may receive this through an assessment from an occupational therapist on site, but you may not actually have an occupational therapist doing an on-site assessment. It may be something not requiring an on-site assessment, and you may choose yourself to go down that path if work cover don't go down that path. But if not, you definitely would still be making sure that the employee's doctor has a clear idea of what the person's core duties are. And if you have, say, for example, somebody in a production role where, a musculoskeletal injury is obviously going to impact them in a big way. So if you know what their limitations are in terms of what they can lift, in terms of weight and movements, and such as lifting above shoulders, that's going to give you good protection in terms of making sure that the person doesn't re-injure themselves, and that you can set timeframes for a return and work on that. So I will just touch on the next couple of points. Workplace culture. I mean, it's quite obviously, it's workplace culture and return to work, workplace injuries. It's such a thing that can be, I guess, grounded in one way by businesses having a return to work policy, having policies and procedures in place. Then, at the end of the day, everyone's going to know what to expect if the unfortunate happens and they're injured. And they know that people are going to be treated the same way, because at the end of the day, if a situation arises where people aren't being managed the same way, there may be issues there. and as part of that culture, and from not just the written paperwork side of things, but from how it is managed, and how staff and management and staff interact, then there's going to be that encouragement to stay at work, and as part of that, offering suitable duties where reasonable, where possible, and supervisors are playing a big part in keeping that connection with the workforce and the business. And in terms of communicating with your worker, as we've said before, it's really important to take into consideration all those key points. And the whole process, the whole return to work process may not be as simple as a 6-week program of return to pre-injury role. It may be longer. So there's a number of things there that are going to affect you in each case, but if you can focus on ensuring these things occur in terms of communicating with your worker, you're more likely to get through the dark and stormy parts, and the times when the employee may themselves not be clear as to whether they're ever going to be fit enough to do the role. So I'll just cover briefly now, in summary, prevention. So review your workplace for potential hazards and discuss strategies, and where possible, implement changes to prevent the injuries. If you have policies and procedures, great, review. I'll touch on our CCIQ bookstore near the end of the presentation, but that we might be able to help you there in terms of paperwork side of things. But also, as part of prevention, hold toolbox talks or meetings with groups of employees on a regular basis. That may be as part of policy reviews or as part of a follow-up after an incident with somebody. Early intervention and stay at work. Main points here: be aware of injuries in your workplace. Do you have procedures in workplace for injuries to be reported? Lodge claims as early as possible. Just be proactive and focus on getting the worker back into work. And on that point of early identification and availability of suitable duties, of course, we go back to injury. The research that demonstrates that staying at work and returning to work is not only the best interest of the worker, but it also has a positive impact on your premium. And in terms of focusing on capacity and developing a supportive work environment, focus on what the injured worker can do based on, obviously, on medical advice, match their capacity with appropriate duties, be flexible to the point where you can reasonably be flexible, without, of course, of being a situation being of detriment to the business and or other staff. And overall provide a supportive workplace that encourages that recovery and return to work. So just mentioning earlier, the CCIQ Bookstore. So if you go to that website on this slide, listed on the slide there, there's a number of template policies, procedures available to download at discounted rates for members. Now, in terms of what we've been speaking about today, there's a template policy, rehabilitation and return to work policy. I know of there is a good, simple to use, easy to use return to work plan template as well. And of course that could be used whether it's work-related injury or not. And also we've got comprehensive guides, so guides covering topics of, how to conduct lawful terminations and how to manage redundancies, performance management, safety management. I'd advise you just to jump when you have a moment. Jump on the website and have a look at what's available there. There is that discount available to HR assistant, people manager members. But if you're not sure about discounts, or if you wanted to have a chat with Sarah, Jason and I, please just give us a call and we can help get you on the right track. And certainly if you have any of your own policies and procedures you want us to have a look at, then please just give us a call. Now, I'll just briefly run over the small business programs and the resources from Office of Industrial Relations. So some of you might not be aware, but we've partnered with the Queensland Office of Industrial Relations to provide workers' compensation advice to all businesses throughout Queensland through the Workers' Compensation Hotline. So this is for businesses who are members and non-members. So I'm briefly just going to go through that program and the resources as well on offer, which are available and accessed through WorkSafe Queensland's website. And I've included the details of the website and the hotline on the last slide. So the On series. So it's a suite of free education presentations developed specifically for small business. Now this is obviously up on their website. It provides listeners with access to strategies to use if one of your workers gets injured at work. It provides you with an understanding of what processes are available to businesses, such as if you suspect fraud, and also, lodging a review if you don't agree with a decision by WorkCover about a claim that's been made. Of course, we can provide assistance with that as well, but there's that resource is great to actually refer to. There's topics that they release throughout the year on their return to work, through their return to work e-bulletin, and that's on rehabilitation and return to work. Now, there's a workplace assistance programs, and these are something that we're actually about to roll out with the Office of Industrial Relations, and this is just with WorkCover and their small business unit that's been set up within WorkCover. So this is to ensure that systems are in place to prevent workplace injury, and if people are injured, return them to meaningful and appropriate work as soon as they can. So there's a team of advisors within WorkCover within that small business unit that will actually, through this program, IPAM, you may have heard, injury management. Injury prevention and management, getting a bit tongue-tied there. And there's basically 3 levels at which they would assist a business based on business size, of course. So they'll review current safety management systems and rehab and return to work arrangements, verify workplace hazards, evaluate workplace safety climate, and from that, or develop an improvement plan tailored to your business's needs. And as I said, there's 3 levels. There's IPAM Advanced, which targets the larger businesses, and it offers, this is at the top end, a 2-year program. IPAM Evolve is a series of short site-based consultations across 3 to 6 months for medium size, and the IPAM for small business, which provides a 3-hour advisory service for a small or micro business. And I must stress too that the small business unit within WorkCover in no way, and this program in no way is attached to any sort of regulation. They're not attached to any sort of compliance or audits. These advisors are not inspectors of workplace health and safety, and they're not. Obviously, the aim of the program is that if any hazards are identified, then they provide advice on the best way to reduce, to address those issues, to address those hazards and reduce the risk of something happening. They are definitely not there to pick points and refer on to workplace health and safety. I just thought I would make a point about that, as this service is actually really, on the face of it, a great opportunity for businesses to have an experienced specialist on site for free. You know, this is provided by the government, and it should be taken up. It really should. And of course, there's other services offered by the program, and there's delivery of presentations, information sessions, and forums for target groups. And they've got tools and templates and guidance materials on the website. And we at CCIQ will be part of those delivery of the presentations and information sessions throughout Queensland. So I'll just quickly go through the Healthy Worker Initiative and the Healthy Workers Toolkit, which is on the next slide. So this is a work health and wellbeing program to assist in reducing the risk of chronic diseases such as cancer and cardiovascular disease, for example. To do this, the programs focus on chronic disease, lifestyle-related risk factors that are modifiable, for example, smoking, poor nutrition, physical inactivity, and the Healthy Workers Toolkit, which is part of that. So it's a wide range. It's made up of a wide range of evidence-based resources to assist you in improving health and wellbeing at the workplace. So there's a planning guide, which you see a picture of on the screen, which outlines really how to get started, including there's a 5-step framework to implementing health and wellbeing program. Jump on the WorkSafe website, worksafe.qld.gov.au, under Work Health and Wellbeing, and you'll find there a number of useful articles, some short clips, and some general informational brochures and fact sheets on the matter, and a number of case studies as well. So just coming now to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for your attendance today. Just in relation to those resources, you've got the WorkSafe website and the Workers' Compensation Helpline for businesses. And of course, if you have membership with us, then you have access to speak to the Employer Assistance team, myself, Sarah and Jason. And I wish you all a great afternoon. I hope the rest of the week goes speedy for you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rob. We have had a couple of questions come through, so we'll just move on to them. First one is, what injuries do I need to notify work cover about, if any?
What injuries do we need to notify? So in relation to, you've got notifiable incidents, which is a separate matter altogether, and obviously where there's an injury that results in death or a serious injury, then that's obviously reportable to Health and Safety Queensland as well. But if we're talking about, say, for example, somebody who's cut their thumb, and the person, you know, you send the person to the doctor for a checkup, they come back, they're fine. Do you need to report that? Well, if it's impeding on the employee's ability to perform their job, you would report that anyway to WorkCover. But at the end of the day, it might turn out to be, it might turn out that it's not the type of claim that would affect your premium anyway. You'd be simply notifying WorkCover of an incident that occurred or an injury that occurred, and they would obviously get assessed. They would obviously have the information at hand that the person is not off work at all, and it would not necessarily have any impact on your policy or your premium. So I think that would cover that question. But if anyone's got any, it's all based on the circumstances at hand too. So if you ever have any questions, just please give us a call. You can ring the workers' compensation hotline, or you can ring us in the employer assistance team. I notice there's 2 more questions.
Yes, there is.
Have you got those in front of you? Great.
This one you mentioned earlier in your presentation, but I think the attendee might have logged on a bit late. But if you'd like to go over it again, what happens if you don't have any suitable duties?
Okay, so if there's no suitable duty, so for example, the person's capacity means that they're unable to perform anything within the workplace or any other type of meaningful work, or you simply don't have other work available for them, then in those cases, WorkCover, you've got an obligation to notify WorkCover in writing of that, and WorkCover will then liaise with the employee to organise host employment. So the claim will continue as if they're with you, working with you, but they're actually with a host employer, which may be could be in a different industry. It could be with anyone. They could be down at Lifeline Bookstore down the road. And really, I go back to a comment earlier about connection, employees' connection, staying connected with the workplace, and sadly the figures show that where employees with longer term injuries or illnesses go on host employment, it's a lot harder for them to get back into work and to return to their pre-injury role. But you know, if that case arises and there's no suitable duties at that point in time, then you know you've done all you can as an employer in terms of your obligations, and WorkCover will then work to find them some meaningful sort of work. So I think I've covered what I'd mentioned in the slides, I hope. Thanks. And what's the last one?
Last question, a continuation on from suitable duties. What happens if my employer disagrees with the suitable duties plan or refuses to come back to work and participate?
Good question. I'm pretty certain that I covered this in the slide earlier too, and it's around employer's obligation and employees' obligation as well. You know, the employees have an obligation under the Workers' Comp and Rehab Act to participate in a return to work program, so they're not meeting their obligations if they refuse to do so. But before you go down the disciplinary path, obviously ask the question, why? What's the concern? What's holding the employee back? Is it miscommunication? Is it that they don't have, for example, they've missed a certificate from their doctor? They haven't received information from WorkCover, or are confused or don't quite understand the process. So it's always good just to, obviously, number one, clarify with them what their concern is and see if you can find out where that concern's coming from. But unfortunately, if it's a situation where they fully understand, but they don't agree with their doctor and that's that. Well, they can't actually step outside what the suitable duties plan says they can do, and they certainly would be risking themselves and the health and safety of themselves and others if they were to do so. So, you know, you would, if you had to move down the disciplinary path, you would. Great. Okay. Thanks, Amanda.
Excellent. Now that's all the questions that have come through today. Thanks, Rob, for coming in, taking time to present today. Thank you for all our listeners who joined us. I will send out an email tomorrow to everyone. I'll have a copy of the slides and the webinar recording, as well as some of the links there that Rob referred to before. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to welcoming you to another webinar in the future. Thank you.